Good evening and welcome to Mindful Live 308. Yeah, tell them good evening, good night, hello, hi. I am your co-host Nathan Springer, joining my lovely host Leora Springer. Yes, she says hi. Mm-hmm. This is lovely Friday evening, 10th of the 11th, the 10th day in November. The month is progressing well. Yes, yes, yes. Just like that, Lins, but with an I instead of the E. Yep. And this evening, there are always lots of things to talk about. So once you're inside of the live, make sure you hit that like button. Double tap the screen on TikTok. That's how they hit the like button on TikTok, by double tapping the screen. Hit the like button on Instagram. And if you are looking at this over on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to Nathan Springer over there. You could share the video if you're looking at this on YouTube and repeat. Allow some people to see it at some later point in time. So be sure to subscribe there. If you miss anything, you'll catch it back there. We are on live 308, so you could guess how much you're missing. You could guess how much you might be missing. Yeah, so let's get ready with some of those stories for the evening. The people, yo, let's jump in. We're talking the price rises in electricity. Because as you know, the RIC, the Regulated Industries Commission, they have advised a certain increase on the electricity prices here in Trinidad and Tobago, because they think that the prices aren't sustainable at that level. So TNTech needs a higher price to keep themselves afloat, keep the business running. So RIC has recommended that, and we're waiting on the government to fully confirm what that price increase is going to look like. So, coming from the Supermarkets Association, they've had something to say on that already. West Trinidad Supermarket faces 58.24% electricity hike. Yep. With the Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago continuing to express concern about the impact of proposed higher electricity rates on its members across the country, the Business Guardian has found that one large supermarket in West Trinidad faces a 58.24% increase in their bill. Yikes. What do you think does pull air conditioning the most? Air conditioning and clothes dryer? Yeah, to some extent. The clothes dryer is a serious puller. Air condition pulls a lot, but it's not necessarily that air condition pulls so much in and of itself, but people generally have air conditions on for a lengthy period of time. An air conditioner isn't just something you use quick for 2 minutes. It's something that stays on for an extended period of time. So yeah. According to the supermarket's August bill from the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, its consumption of electricity was 77,000 kilowatts and the demand charge was 155.6. The supermarket's bill was sent to the RIC. They got their bill broken down. The supermarket's August bill of $26,138 comprised a consumption charge of 15,000 yada yada yada. So it was total at 26,000. Based on the RIC's analysis, if the proposed electricity rate hike is approved by the cabinet, the supermarket in Western Trinidad would pay a monthly bill of $41,362. So their bill would now move from 26,000 to 41,000. According to the information provided by Supermarkets Association of Trinidad and Tobago, a typical supermarket retail establishment presently has a bi-monthly billing cycle of around 30,000 TT dollars. A supermarket owner who asked to not be named told the Business Guardian that on average, smaller sized supermarkets spend 5% of their revenues on their electricity bill. So as those bills go up, what do you think is going to happen? Are the supermarket owners going to just be okay with taking less and less profit? You know, they are here to really share with all members of Trinidad and Tobago. Last night, in the discussion, we reached down into some apology for the National Socialists of Germany. Um, but some people are talking about how business owners are just stealing from the country. They're just taking and not giving anything back. And okay, if that's what you believe business owners are doing, then when you increase the input prices that they're going to have to pay, what do you think they're going to do? Are they going to just hold that burn, hold that price increase? They're going to take that hit all on their own? I don't think so. In a statement to the Business Guardian, the Supermarkets Association said it expects that there would be a sharp increase in supermarkets' electricity bill, which would impact operating costs and eventually prices. According to the information provided by supermarkets, right. Some major points to take into consideration. If the new rate is accepted, then price pressures will be experienced. There is also the potential for a higher incidence of pilferage, as this is already high and the population is experiencing price pressures from the cost of living. So when people are worried about these electricity prices that we're seeing possibly coming to an increase, it's not just the residential prices where you may find yourself paying $100, $200, $300 more per month. That's not the only thing. Supermarket prices would be going up. Supermarkets are where you buy your groceries. And then the price for every single commercial area, their electricity prices would be going up too. Places that use heavy electricity, large manufacturing operations, meat facilities, ice cream, vegetable storage, all will be affected. Larger establishments that require air conditioning for operations due to high heat, and also large cold storages. What about the malls? Malls that use a heaping load of air condition every single day, whole day. What are their price increases in electricity going to look like? And how are they going to take that cost? Are they going to pass the cost on to their renters in the mall? And if rent in the mall goes up, you know what that does to the prices of everything inside of those rented stores inside of the mall. The cabinet has not yet approved these price increases, so we don't know exactly the direction it's going to go in, but it does not look promising. And you see, that's the whole thing in Trinidad and Tobago when we're talking about these price increases, where the government controls the price of this industry. It's not as simple as the free market and just evaluating it with the free market. It's the government. The same government that also controls a lot of people's salaries. The same government that offered people 4% over the span of how many years? If your salary increased by 4% only, but your electricity bill personally to the residential areas would increase by 20%. Your food bill may increase by 10%, etc., etc., etc. Time for large businesses to go solar to reduce their cost. Well, for one, solar takes several years to pay back for itself. It's a upfront cost. So yeah, if you're suggesting they go solar, it's still going to be more money they're going to have to put out there, and they may want to recoup that money somehow. Chickens are grown in air-conditioned pens, so chicken price will go up. Look at that. Nearly everything everywhere depends on some kind of electricity. And as those prices go up, business people are in business to make money. They're not in business for charity's sake. So as prices go up, they would try to do measures to make sure that they don't lose more and more. Would we as a country be able to keep up with the measures that the businesses do? Would we be able to keep up with the price increases? Consider that. Running swiftly along into another article I saw there, some more stories coming out from Trinidad, looking at policing in Trinidad, because you know crime and policing is a regular topic here on this live and in Trinidad in general. And there's a limited amount of, there are a limited amount of police in Trinidad and Tobago. So what police do with their time when they're on duty is a kind of important thing. It's a kind of important thing what the police do with their time. There are a limited number of police. They have a limited amount of time they spend on duty. So you want the police, once they're on duty, to be doing the most. You know, you regularly hear people complain that the police just sit down in AC vehicles and they're on the phone and they're not doing anything and yada 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 yada. But I was looking at something here where even the police were complaining about something that they consider to be a bad use of police time and police resources. Cops guarding president's house upset. Use defense force for that. And before you jump to assumptions about what these police are doing here, make sure you understand exactly what they're talking about when they're talking about guarding the president's house here. Police in the Port of Spain division say they are unhappy with officers from Belmont police station being assigned as sentries at President Christine Kangalu's Cascade home, which is unoccupied. So there's a team of officers guarding the president's personal residence that is currently unoccupied. A source familiar with the matter said police officers have been assigned to the property since Kangalu was sworn in as president in March. The source claimed it was customary for police to guard the private home of a public office holder. Note, it was not customary, for police to guard the private home of a public office holder, noting that the defense force or a specialized unit like the guard and emergency branch or the special branch should instead be used. The source claimed 2 police officers were assigned as sentries to the home every 4 hours each day. That's 6 additional patrols that could have been done in the time that officers were there. This is simply not the role of the police to sit there at a house and act as a security guard. They are members of the defense force who are very capable of doing these kinds of exercises, the source said. Concerns were also raised over efficiency at the Belmont station, as 2 officers were required to be on sentry duty, leaving other officers to deal with patrols. This seriously affects other tasks, and there are murders going on right now in Belmont and in St. Anne's, which is under the purview of the Belmont station. Is this the best use of trained crime-fighting police officers to guard an empty house? And you see, things like this show us to a great deal that although much of the world threw off the shackles of colonialism and the monarchy and oligarchy, etc., and we say we're in a democracy where all men are created equal and we are all equal in the eyes of the law, you understand that's a lot of hogwash. That's rubbish, because the leaders don't believe that. They don't act like that. They don't operate like that. They operate like we are special. We get to have licensed firearms. We get to have police guarding our home when we aren't even there. People are afraid of home invasions around the country. And the president, in her second home where she doesn't even live, has police guarding. No human life is there. No human life. But the police are there guarding. Responding to Guardian Media's questions via email on Monday, the head of the communications unit of the Office of the President, Cheryl Lala, said while the security arrangements could not be disclosed, assigning security assets was not under the purview of the president. Lala suggested that further inquiries be directed to the police service. And, you know, in a crime, with the crime situation being as it is in Trinidad, you wonder who makes a decision like that. Who decides that an empty building is worth two police officers constantly interchanging shifts all day? Who decides something like that? However, Senior Superintendent Ali Mohammed, who is in charge of the Port of Spain division, said he visited the Belmont station up to yesterday and received no complaints from officers about being assigned to sentry duty. Mohammed added that while the Special Branch and Guard and Emergency Branch provide transport for the president, officers from other stations could also be assigned. As such, he said a special unit comprising 14 officers were devised to be assigned to the house. 14 officers in a unit to guard an empty house. All men are equal, but some are more equal than some. Can someone explain to me what is the beneficial countrywide reason for 14 officers guarding an empty house? How does the country benefit from that? Can someone explain that to me? The source also claimed that the only police mobile unit in the Port of Spain division was assigned to the president's property. "14 officers and the only police mobile unit." Good night, Tony the Ambassador. I'm saying again, 14 officers and the only police mobile unit in Port of Spain region is assigned to guard the empty house of the president. In a country with 600 murders in a year. That's what we're doing with our police. In the Belmont district, which is one of the hottest spots in Trinidad, the Belmont district was the district with the quadruple murder. Was that last week or a couple weeks ago? 14 police officers and the only mobile unit assigned to guard an empty house. And when people respond to this, the senior guy in charge of Port of Spain division there, he said that, he doubts no one complained to him. And the head of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Social Welfare Association, ASP Gideon Dixon, said he was unaware of the situation. As he did not receive any complaints from officers. He noted that if the claims were true, it was not outside of the remit of the police to protect public officials. And this is my problem here. He is saying that it's not outside the remit of the police to protect public officials, which is, I could understand that. Protecting public officials, that's another thing. But protecting the homes of public officials, that's the duty of the police. Is that a primary duty of the police? To protect the homes of public officials? So if I become a public official, any house I have anywhere in Trinidad, I could get a team of officers to just go down there and guard it? And tell me how that isn't in the spirit of the monarchs of old, of the old styles of governance, where the people who governed you were your rulers. Now we're supposed to be governed by ministers. A minister another word for minister is servant. What benefit does the president provide to Trinidad and Tobago as such that 14 officers and the only mobile unit in the Port of Spain division could be assigned to her empty house? What benefit commensurate does Trinidad get for that? If the office of the president, I'm not saying the president herself, I'm not being cruel in what I'm saying here, but if the office of the president in the Trinidad and Tobago context disappears today and goes away for the next year, Trinidad will still function normally. That empty house just needs 3 or 4 officers. No, that empty house needs a padlock. That's what that empty house needs. A padlock. How come your empty house is more special than anyone else's? How come? The public official, their person gets protection because they are a representative of Trinidad and Tobago. And we protect our representatives. We put them in a house that we build and upkeep and maintain and protect. That's why they are in the president's house. We protect the president's house, the official residence of the president. That's why we put you there. You can't padlock your house, put on your security system, and say bye. 14 officers and a mobile unit constantly need to be there. How is that different from the royals? Could it be protected from vandalism? Well, here's the question I'm asking Paul Duncan. Is it a privilege of public office that your home is now protected from even vandalism? Or is it all of your homes? I'm not talking about the home you live in, because she is not living there. Is it that once you're an official, all of your assets become protected by the state? Because if that's so, we're going back to monarchy days. That's like kings and the lords and ladies of old. That's how it was back then. And you know, it's so sad to me. It seems like a lot of people are very okay with that kind of mentality. A lot of people are very okay. Nobody lives there. Yes. A lot of people seem like they love the idea of having a king, you know. They like kissing the king's ring. They like looking up to the queen and yes, queen. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord King. Like, what is wrong with you people? That is right back to that old way where the entire world attempted or is attempting to move away from. We should be able to vote in president and commissioner of police. Then they'll see how wasteful and superfluous the office is. Well, the office of the president is a bit superfluous. But I could agree with you, Wide Leather. I regularly say I'd rather vote for my police commissioner. I think police commissioners should be elected. And I could see even in the ceremonial president that we have, you could attempt to make them elected too. Because if they are elected, then they could actually exert some power in the system. Who knows? Because as it is, the president doesn't have as much power as some people. The president is kind of a rubber stamp to some extent. But yeah, talking about assigning public servants to here, there, and wherever. What are you talking about, bro? I'm talking about a myriad of different things. Right now, I'm moving on from the last topic and I'm talking about this one right now. Suspicious transfer of PS worries union boss. Public Services Association President Leroy Batiste is urging the country to wake up And take note of how Permanent Secretary Kurt Mayer was transferred from the Ministry of Education less than 2 weeks after he was criticized on a public platform by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. I don't know how many of you all remember that situation. On October 26th, Dr. Rowley spoke about an unnamed permanent secretary being a hindrance to achieving the government's budget day promise to pay public servants back pay before Christmas 2023. So I don't know how many of you recall that the government promised the public servants, you all getting your back pay before Christmas. Hey, people inside of the live, double tap the screen over there on TikTok. Get those likes pumping. The likes are on some rookie numbers likes there. We can't be just chilling on 300 likes. Get those likes pumping. Double tap the screen. That's how you get those likes really moving there. Get the algorithm to know it's some good stuff. But yeah, if you all remember that back pay story, the government promised the public servants who accepted the 4% increase that they would get their bonus of a back pay for Christmas. And I personally think that was a bit of a divisive move among the unions, where they're rewarding those unions who took the 4% early, and they're, as it were, punishing the unions who didn't take the 4% yet. And now the Public Service Association, the PSA, the union in charge of public servants, bear in mind, a permanent secretary is a public servant. So the union in charge of those public servants, that union didn't yet take the 4%. And that union was coming under serious fire. The union boss was under fire. They were asking for his head. Members of the union were upset because members of the union are looking around and seeing other people are going to get their back pay for Christmas, and I am going to be sucking salt, hoping that you get better than 4% in the new year. While in the new year, you might still only get the 4%. Maybe you should have took the 4% and allow me to get the back pay. And I think that was what the government was trying to, the reaction the government may have been looking for in the first place. But then there was a bit of a spoke in the wheel there with the plan. The Prime Minister came out and announced that a permanent secretary was basically holding up the whole back pay business. A permanent secretary was saying back pay wouldn't be available for Christmas. And now, I wonder. I don't know. I wonder if that permanent secretary was working to the benefit of the Public Service Association. I don't know that to be a fact. But I wonder. And also the fact now that the Public Service Association is now standing in defense of this particular permanent secretary, you could wonder about that even more. Yes. You could wonder about that even more because now they have come to his defense. They have come to his defense, and you know, you could wonder about these kinds of situations. This series of events is of great concern to Batiste. On Wednesday, November 8th, Mayer proceeded on vacation leave, and a new assignment will reportedly be awaiting him when he returns from leave, media reports yesterday revealed. Let me be clear, this is the head of the Public Service Union speaking here. Oh, Trini Hotep, I want workers to get their back pay. That is not the issue. The issue is the whole issue of political interference. The reality is that public officials ought to be entitled to exercise their duties, without fear of repercussions from the political directorate. This is one of the constitutional safeguards you have by being a public officer, being insulated from the politicians. That is the whole idea of being a public servant. You serve the public, not the administration, Batiste told Guardian Media yesterday. And here's the thing. I disagree with him. And don't get me wrong, I am regularly worried about the power that some public officials get, that politicians get. If they could control all of the public officials, I worry about the power that they are able to accrue to. But if a politician cannot get a public servant to do what they tell them to do. Then the people that are running our country are unelected bureaucrats. When I vote for the politician to get into governance, I am voting for that person or those persons to be able to make decisions and make changes. If you're telling me I'm going to be able to vote for them, but they are not going to be able to make changes because the public servants could do whatever they want and the politicians don't get to tell the public servants what to do, then I am worried about this system. The voters don't have the power then. For the voters to have the power, the voted in people need to be able to make decisions. And listen, I am not Dr. Rowley's #1 fan and cheerleader. But I am actually on his side here. How are you telling me the government is trying to get things done? The workers that are supposed to be executing the policy of the government are resisting the work of the government, and they're supposed to be left alone? Y'all, I hope you all understand. I don't know how many of you pay attention to US politics. And if you pay attention to US politics over the last 10 years or so, you've heard there has been a phrase, a statement, a term called the deep state. And when they talk about the deep state over in the United States, they're talking about things like this: unelected bureaucrats and people in positions, public servants, that cannot be fired by the public, that aren't hired by the public, and are making decisions on behalf of the public. That's not supposed to be the case. So every 5 years, clean house and bring in your new administrators, then, you know, white leather. I kind of believe yes. The problem in Trinidad and Tobago is the public service, the state apparatus, has gotten too big. It is oversized. So now, to do something like that, it's like you're going to have to fire 50,000 people and rehire 50,000 people every 5 years. And I think that means the state is just too large. They're too big. They're in too many areas. They're trying to do too much. I think you should be coming in with your administrators for the most part. It's just kind of the worker bees down there that could stay and go on from one to the next. But the government that I vote in, like if I want change, if let's say Double G convinces me he is going to be the best candidate to run this country, and I want to vote NTA, the National Transformation Alliance, that's my new party, and I want them to come in and change this country from the foundation, come up, change everything in this country, please. But when they come in, 60,000 public servants remain right there, and those 60,000 public servants have a vested interest in the country remaining as is. How is anything going to change? NTA comes in and brings in 60 people on the top end of the political sphere, but the 60,000 public servants are the fingers of the state. The politicians you vote for, you change the head, but these are the fingers of the state. This is how things get done. The politicians themselves don't go down there. They work through the apparatchik there. They get these things out. But if the fingers of the state have a mind of their own and do what they want, then you could change the head 1 billion times. The fingers are going to continue what the fingers are doing. And that's a problem. That's a problem. We don't want that. A public officer, this is the union boss speaking here. A public officer, simply for expressing a factual scenario, is now being victimized by the political directorate. That is now wrong. And this country has to wake up. And somebody needs to stand up and say enough is enough. We cannot create an autocracy or dictatorship at its very best. And the public officer is being punished by simply stating a factual situation. Here's the thing though. I guess we'll find out if it was a factual statement. If indeed the money couldn't be prepared by December, by Christmas, well then the money still isn't going to be prepared by Christmas. And the permanent secretary might be vindicated. However, if the teachers do in fact get their back pay by Christmas, that's an indictment on the permanent secretary. And the government is now saying that they are going to get the back pay done by Christmas. So how were you saying it was impossible? They moved you and now it's possible. The problem doesn't seem to be the possibility. The problem seems to be you. Section 121(6)(a) of the Constitution speaks to the transfer of a permanent secretary. It states, the power to make appointments on transfer to the following offices shall vest in the Prime Minister. Any office of the permanent secretary from one such office to another such office carrying the same salary. In other words, the Prime Minister has full authority to transfer. He has full authority to transfer them. So it's not a dictatorship or authoritarian for the Prime Minister to transfer out a permanent secretary who is disobeying them. And a political analyst went on to say it's concerning. An opposition member went on to say this is worrying. But I think they are talking nonsense. You all know, the faithful followers inside the Mindful Life, you all know, I am regularly worried about government overstepping their bounds and taking too much power. But to me, this is not the most concerning move in Trinidad and Tobago. This is a move I'm in favor of. Remove public servants that are inhibiting the movements of the elected officials. Simple as. Meanwhile, retired public service head Reginald Dumas said it appeared there was not sufficient consultation between the government and the public service on whether it would be possible to pay all back pay by Christmas. But does the government need to consult the public service really for that? If the government has the purse, the government knows the budget, do they really need to consult the public service to decide on back pay? Dumas, however, said politicians criticizing public servants was not new and has been happening since 1975 under Dr. Eric Williams. Still, Dumas said there are some questions he would like Mayor, the permanent secretary, to answer, including the timing of his letter to the finance minister, where he stated back pay for teachers could only be paid in May 2024. This agreement with teachers was done in May 2023. We are now in November. That's 6 months. What did the PS do once that agreement was reached? Did he say, let's see whether I have the staff to put together all the documents and all the papers to work out what each teacher is entitled to? I don't know. We need to find out from Mr. Mayor. Dumas also found it strange that Mayor gave a commitment for May 2024. How does he know what money will be available in May next year? Suppose the price of oil drops and money becomes even tighter. If you feel like you could not do this by Christmas, then what action did you take? So I will need to know these things before I leap to conclusions. And I like what Mr. Dumas there speaks like someone educated and knowledgeable on the topic. He speaks as someone knowledgeable on the topic. Like, okay, permanent secretary. The agreement happened 6 months ago. How come you now writing this letter? Okay. You say that you cannot get the back pay out by Christmas. How are you so sure you'd get it out by May? What is the problem that would cause you to not be able to get it out by Christmas, but you'd be able to get it out by May? And in that case, if there is a problem inhibiting it, like causing it to happen only by May, let's say the problem was staffing, then the letter you were supposed to write to the finance minister would have been a letter saying that the current staffing would make it impossible. We may need to get some contract workers on temporary to get this done by Christmas. But to say that it is impossible to happen by Christmas and it would happen by May, full stop, there are questions to be asked. There are questions to be asked. Transfer of PS. I have done what has to be done, and that's it. That sounds very much like Dr. Rowley, to be clear. I have done what has to be done, and that's it. So said Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley yesterday when asked by the Express about the transfer of the permanent secretary, declining to say which ministry was transferred to. With Mayor gone, the Ministry of Education has one remaining permanent secretary who is expected to manage the process of ensuring back pay for the public servants who accepted the 4% pay increase. The 4% salary increase is paid in accordance with the time frame given by the Minister of Finance. There are also two deputy permanent secretaries in the ministry. On Wednesday, Mayor was transferred hours after the permanent secretary in the office of the Prime Minister issued a circular requesting each permanent secretary, head of department, to identify and temporarily assign one experienced accounts clerk with knowledge of the preparation of pay sheets to the Ministry of Education until December 2023. So the Prime Minister basically admitted it. I did it. I did what had to be done, and that's it. I don't have a problem with that. Like to me, that's your job. Like, the people who are upset about the Prime Minister doing that, what should he have done? Be kept at ransom by public servants? Allow the government's policies to be dictated by the public servants? Unelected people? Understand, you could not like Dr. Rowley, but the reason he has the authority to go ahead making decisions on behalf of this country is because he was elected. People voted for him. Nobody voted for any permanent secretary. You, as a permanent secretary, don't have the permission and authority to choose policy for this country. You were not elected. If you want to choose countrywide policy, put your name up for election. That's the people who choose policy. Elected people. If you go, who name Pedo Richards? What kind of name is that? If you go and work under the elected people, your job is going to be to follow the instructions that come down from the elected people. And it's not authoritarian or dictatorship or someone being a dictator for them to use the authority they're given. For them to use the authority they're given. the prime minister was given a certain amount of authority in the country. Like some people want to act in the country. Like anytime the prime minister exerts power and authority, he's being a dictator. No, he's not. He's acting as a prime minister. A prime minister has power. A prime minister has a lot of power. And he's able to use it. That's what a prime minister is. That does not make him a dictator. But it's interesting to me how it seems like this the whole staffing, overstaffing, understaffing, right staffing, bad staffing of government offices, they just kind of seem so convenient. Like the DPP's office is woefully understaffed, while nearly every useless office in the public service is overstaffed. Like in general, the public service is overstaffed. But if you look at any area that is the most important, very likely it's understaffed. How does it happen to be that way? What a strange coincidence. All the useless public service areas are overstaffed, overflowing with extra people. Anytime you need anything of use, the DPP, all of a sudden you don't have enough prosecutors. Less than half the amount needed. And let's look at another office that is woefully understaffed. Very interesting, which one? Auditor General's work hampered by staff shortages. Isn't that a coincidence? The Auditor General's department has a 35% staff shortage, which has severely reduced its work, and its 2022 report highlighted irregularities, some of which are fairly substantial, while two other matters are at the investigation committee level and in the court. This information was given yesterday by Assistant Auditor General. In response to a question from Tanku about staffing levels, Sinanan said there's a 35% vacancy level, translating to about 80 auditors. We're currently liaising with the Chief Personnel Officer and Director of Personnel Administration to get those vacancies filled. We've gotten over the last 2 years some vacancies filled in the professional and lower levels, so we're working on it. But this is a problem we've been facing for quite a long time. The accommodation at the waterfront complex is quite okay, but the vacancy situation is really critical that we need to address, and it's being addressed as we've gotten support from the Finance Ministry to fill vacancies at the professional technical levels over the past 2 years. You know, it's amazing. The money to rent the building is always there. You know, they always have a building rented with enough space for all of the needed staff. But somehow, the logistics to get essential staff, that just, it just keeps slipping us. Just such a difficult thing, to work out those logistics for proper staffing in critical areas, It's something that is just so complex to really work out and work. Who knows how to get these things done? And this is the Auditor General's office. These are the people going around examining how the government spends money. If there aren't enough people to even examine how bad they're spending, and bear in mind, even if they're spending bad, the Auditor General has limited power to do anything anyhow. They could just pass it up the chain, and sometimes passing it up the chain is killing it, just as good as killing it. But their staff, they're either way. Amazing, isn't it? How does that work out to just happen to this queen? All right, people. That's all I have for now. That's all I have for now. I'm diving out early on this Friday evening. Any comments or questions inside of the live? As Trini Hotep always says, correct. Be mindful, not mindless. All right, people. Retirement age. What about it? How they get staff to collect money but not to pay? Ha. Good night, Divine Blue. All them raising the retirement age. Well, we spoke about that quite a few times, and it's kind of mathematically necessary as for the system as it exists right now. My problem with a lot of that is if it's maths, like if this thing is a mathematical process, you were supposed to be able to predict this before it came to this level. Like, to me, this is something that since 2000 you should have been slowly planning, increasing incrementally as the population ages and the inputs into the NIB decrease. You slowly change those things over time so that it doesn't feel like one generation stumbles upon it and oh no, all of a sudden we have to work 5 years later. That sounds cruel. But mathematically, it said the money was used for other purposes. Yes, very likely it was. But, you know, the thing with that is if the money was used corruptly, the money may have been used corruptly. That's not a good thing. But the money was used. And if there's no money, there's literally no money. You can't get blood out of a stone. You can't get money where there is no money. We have no data analytics in this country. Well, I think the several actuarials inside of NIB would disagree with that. I know NIB hires actuarial scientists. So, do those actuarials inside of the National Insurance Board do nothing? Oh no. I would have thought that the maths for some of this would be predictable, that you'd be able to forecast some of these things. But I guess if theft is happening inside of the National Insurance Board too, it would make things harder to predict. All right. Any further questions or comments, people? It's reported that there's always money for other things. Well, yeah. Not always, but there's regularly money for other things. But the National Insurance Board is a separate entity. So, I mean, you could want that the government sends off a couple billion to supplement them, but other than that, if they bad spend and they don't have the money to give it out, what's gonna happen? Like, what's the alternative? Where does the money come from? And some of that has to do, to me, other than the bad management and corruption inside of the National Insurance Board and all of that, some of that has to do with the fact that NIB is a kind of socialist program where people input different amounts, varying amounts people input, but everyone basically gets out the same. That in and of itself creates for a complicated situation. Every time I hear a billion, I get frightened. I wonder if we're just printing it. Bro, we can't print money. We don't have money to print. We could borrow. That's what the frighten you have to frighten with us isn't printing. We don't just print. You have to borrow. Like if we're just printing it in Trinidad and Tobago, it's not doing any good. We don't have that kind of power. We don't have that kind of pull out there. Anyway, I'm out, folks. Have a good weekend. I had a good week with you all. Thank you guys for joining. I'll be here again for the next Mindful live show, which is going to be Monday evening starting 9. So until then, people, Stay well. I'm out. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Springer. Ha ha ha. Correct, Ramjan. Correct. I am Nathan Springer, and I'll see you guys again for the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye. Laters.